Welcome to the Sacred Window podcast. Here, we look closely at the intersections of the postpartum window, the Ayurvedic perspective on health and healing, and the universal mother principles that are the keys to giving and receiving effective care. Hello, I'm Christine Devlin Eck. I'll be taking you through interviews with professionals who are making a profound difference in the lives of their clients, conversations with individuals brave enough to share their stories of vulnerability as a way to lift up others, and my own journey through birth, parenting, caregiving, and building a conscious business. We are here to honor the sacred windows, the profound transitions in life that give it all meaning. Welcome to the conversation.
And I will never be the same again.
Welcome to the Sacred Window podcast. I'm so happy to have Molly McConnell join me today. Molly and I are going to be talking about the gifts of Kapha Dosha, resilience, rejuvenation, and how we can tap into the energy of water and earth elements to feel our best. And as we're recording this, we're entering into spring. This is a Kapha increase time. And so this is a beautiful topic that we have not talked about on the podcast before. Molly is someone I met this past year. She is a very incredibly dear person. We were so lucky to spend 6 days at the Sacred Window retreat together. Molly is a certified Ayurvedic practitioner. She's a longtime teacher and student of yoga. She's the co-founder of Cultivate Balance. This is a practice that provides personal consultations, virtual workshops, in-depth lifestyle programs, seasonal cleanses that support individuals to nurture themselves so they can really lean into their purpose in life, so we can do what we want to do. We want to show up in all the best ways. And you help people do that. Molly currently lives in Asheville, North Carolina. She works with people virtually and in person, and she's also a student of Ayurvedic postpartum care, and which has brought us together. Molly, thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you so much, Christine. It's a joy to get to have this conversation with you.
For sure. And I love that this is the conversation we're having because the moment I met you, I felt like I was just in complete resonation with you because you are like a pitta kapha, like a kapha pitta person, and I am too. I have that healthy fire, but also like this really inherent like love of kapha dosha. And so I just really was like, yes. So tell me, I mean, well, first of all, for those people who are listening who are like, what's kapha dosha? I don't understand. Let's just start there.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you. It's great to be a Kapha woman in the world. Kapha is one of the three Ayurvedic doshas, also called the constitution or a mind-body type. And Kapha dosha is represented by the earth and water elements. Now, we all have these earth and water energies within us, but some people have it a little bit more, and that can show up in their constitution and their personality and their body type. And for some people, it can show up with the change in season, because Kapha dosha also relates to the spring season. If you think about spring and the earth and water elements, streams begin to flow, maybe snow starts to melt, there's more moisture in the air, sprouts are popping up through the ground. There's this kind of earth and water new life energy coming in spring, and that energy around us in the season can also impact what is happening within the elements of our own bodies. And I'll just also mention Kapha dosha in all of us is responsible for resilience, for immunity, generosity, stability, love, endurance, patience, forgiveness. It's this very stable, grounded, kind of like holding constitution. And as I said, we all have these qualities, whether or not you're kapha dominant, those qualities are still present within you. And if you can understand how to work with the doshas, you can actually work to increase the wonderful gifts of kapha within yourself that actually even become a little bit more available in the spring, which is something I think is so exciting.
And it's, also when we look at, all of the natural ways that we have kapha within us, that like what this ideal kapha balance enables us to feel resilience, enables us to feel loving and juicy and, like we got things under control and we're steady and cruising. Um, but then when we feel too much kapha dosha, talk about that. What
Mhm.
happens then?
Too much kapha dosha feels like stagnancy. It feels heavy, damp, and cold in the body, just like you can think of if there were an excess of earth and water rather than a gentle flowing stream. Too much earth and water can become a mudslide, right? And can kind of dampen the possibility for new life. So excess kapha imbalance can show up in the body as things like brain fog, heaviness, low motivation, low appetite, a desire to sleep for long periods of time. Even heavier emotions like sadness and depression can kind of weave in with kapha imbalance, as well as colds, congestions, challenges with the lungs, anything that is about kind of like too much moisture in the body, too much cloudiness, too much heaviness, too much dampness in the body is a kapha type of imbalance.
Right. And I think that, in so many ways, um, the overwhelm that people can experience in life can lead us to sort of almost just like surrender a little bit into that earth. It's almost like it feels like it's seeking safety in like earth and water because that is so stable. So I never actually thought about this until this moment, but like almost, maybe when we're feeling, the intensity of life around us, it just feels safe to go into like a really heavy place, that almost like putting on a weighted blanket. Um,
Yes.
but then we can kind of feel a little stuck in those places.
Well, and I think it's all about with all the doshas and with everything in Ayurveda, it's always the question of what am I harnessing and what am I balancing? Because it's not just about balancing kapha, balancing kapha. It's like how can we harness the powerful energies of earth and water to feel that steadiness and stability that you're talking about without going so far into it that we feel stuck.
Right, right. Yes. And I love that so much because I think about that a lot with, in regards to postpartum, where it's, like, oh my gosh, that's, a vata aggravated time, this air and space where everything is so subtle and people can feel kind of out of control or untethered. So I think a lot about how can we, nature wants that at that time. Nature wants elevated air and space elements for reasons. So how can we kind of create that intentionality and look at the gifts within this? And so I love
Mhm.
really looking at the cycles of the year, and this is springtime and kapha is naturally elevated for us. We think about like, leaving behind everything we've been adding on in the winter, like packing things on to keep ourselves warm and sustained during, this really cold. And let me tell you, it's been a winter up here in the Northeast.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, like thinking about intentionally releasing the things that have been held on to and
Mhm.
also keeping the qualities of kapha that help us to feel grounded.
Yeah.
Good.
Yes. Yes. That is what it's all about. And I love that you brought up the postpartum window and the gifts of Vata, because there's so much, you know, connection and intuition that comes available when Vata is heightened like that, in that sweet spot. All the doshas have gifts. I always like to make this very clear to everyone. They're all special. They all have gifts that we can harness at different times. And we'll do another episode to talk about the gifts of Pitta.
Yeah. Yeah, this deserves some sequels for sure. Um,
Mhm.
so, one of the things that you do in your practice is support people in seasonal cleanses, and that's a very um sort of standard practice in an Ayurvedic lifestyle, is looking at what are the times of the year that it's time to release, it's time to reset. And I think that's a huge piece that's missing in sort of the modern medical model, where there's no time for reset. There's no time to like pause the adding in there's just no time for the body to like rest and like reset. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, and in your experience, I guess, like, how did this experience land for you when you first started working with this natural rhythm of like spring cleansing, and what did you feel in your body?
Mhm. Wow, that's a great question. I was just this morning reflecting on like my initial experience with cleansing, and how coming into Ayurveda, it was such a different approach. I thought that cleansing was about control and deprivation. And when I came into Ayurveda in my life and Ayurvedic cleansing, I was like, wow, this can be nourishing. I can feel light and clear in the spring after an Ayurvedic cleanse without feeling exhausted, depleted, and deprived. That was like absolutely mind-blowing for me, and continues to be mind-blowing for my clients and for people that I kind of walk through this Ayurvedic way. So those are the things that I noticed initially. Like the clarity is there, but it's not so much lightness that I feel anxious, disoriented, hungry, for example. Ayurveda really, in my experience, helps us align with the rhythms of nature to find the middle path. We're always working in terms of opposites in Ayurveda: hot, cold, wet, dry, all of those. And it kind of helps us figure out what is the middle for us, so that each person can get the maximum result, can find what they need, and also so that can be a different experience than what someone else might be having in the same cleanse, because there is this kind of fluidity between opposites. It's not all one thing, and it's not all one size fits all. So those were some of the things that initially spoke to me about Ayurvedic cleansing, and kind of what sets it apart and what makes it work in a way that is very lasting and not just short term.
Yeah, I really felt that too when I started studying Ayurveda. It became so clear that in order to engage in this science, I had to like self-study. I was like my primary teacher, because I'm in this human body, and Ayurveda literally is the science of life and living. And so here I was like, "Oh, I never noticed that before. I never paid attention to that before. Now I'm totally obsessed with everything about my digestion and all of the things it does. And how does this, like, it informed me so much in so many different ways. And I realized, like, of course, my body is different than every single other person's. And so there is not one answer to every single thing, that every single, like, we all have to discover it ourselves. And the best support people are the ones who meet us where we are.
Mm. Yes, yes. I feel like so much of my work in Ayurveda is helping people learn how to listen to their bodies. And I feel like Ayurveda really gives us the framework for coming home to our bodies, for listening to that deep intuition, because there's so much power in our cravings. For example, if your intuition, if your body is really telling you that you would like to eat something a little bit spicy, that's information that means that there is something in you that would benefit from the hot pungent qualities. And if you can understand your constitution, you can kind of gather some of the patterns of what those cravings might look like. But the more you practice, do the self-study of Ayurveda, the more you realize your body is telling you exactly what it needs.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And it just takes doing it, like quieting down and listening. And that might be the hardest part for people in this culture that we live in, where we're taught to seek the answers from experts outside of us and not really tune in. But that process in itself is so incredibly grounding to bring it back to earth and water element. Like when we get that opportunity to like truly notice what's going on, all of a sudden we're like dropped in. How are you sharing your gifts and passion for caregiving with others? In a world where education and awareness around the postpartum window is lacking or missing from our modern systems, we have a profound opportunity to shift that paradigm. You may be a few simple offerings away from making a truly impactful difference in the lives of mothers and families in your community. We are here to support your journey in the ways that work best for you. Schedule a conscious care strategy session to meet one on one with me, and let's identify the right next step for you to begin a path of conscious care for new families that fits your life and your needs. Visit www.sacredwindowstudies.com/strategy-session to schedule a time that works best for you. That's www.sacredwindowstudies.com/strategy-session.
And that's where I think rituals and routine, which are so fundamental to Ayurveda, really come into play because it gives us that. If you know that you cleanse twice a year, Ayurvedically, for example, it gives you that seasonal pause. It's just already on your schedule. And with daily routines, when we kind of know what to expect from day to day, we can find more of those moments in between to pause, to be with ourselves, to check in, and then to adjust appropriately. But if we're always kind of flying by the seat of our pants from one thing to the next, it can be very hard to stop ourselves because we're not in a habit, we're not in any rhythm that even allows for a pause at all. So if I could recommend, one place to start for people, it would be to notice the rhythms of your life. What are the things that you do every day? And how can you really hold on to those and, tweak them to fit your needs? And then what are the things that you can do every month? And what's something that you can do every season? How can you just start to feel into the rhythms of your own life to make sure that you're getting these moments to pause and check in and say, okay, what do I need right now?
So good. So good. It's such a good place to start. So, when we're thinking about tapping into the energy of water and earth elements and the gifts of Kapha Dosha, to me, that just brings up like everything I want to feel. I want to feel super present and loving with my family. I want to feel really healthy where people are like dropping down sick all around me this winter. I want to feel like I can get through the day without feeling like I need to lay down on the couch and like take a cat nap because I'm like depleted. I
Mhm.
want to feel like I'm not gaining weight too quickly when I eat my food. Like I want to be able to feel like my digestion is like effortless and like regular. So talk about like how we can harness these gifts. Like what can we do on a daily basis? Because you already mentioned like ritual and routine, and this in itself, like routine is kapha promoting. This like gives us steadiness when we do something at the same time every day, or just do something every day or every season or whatever it is. But let's talk a little bit more about like these gifts of kapha and like how we can really lean into them.
Well, because spring is happening right now, the gifts of kapha are kind of like popping up. And it's really our work to make sure that kapha doesn't increase too much so that we feel stuck, so that we can stay in that sweet spot with the immunity and the endurance and the patience that comes with kapha. So, one of the most important things that we can do in kapha season to stay in that sweet spot and harness the gifts of kapha is to gather momentum with daily exercise. Of all the doshas, kapha is really balanced by consistent movement because it helps keep a lightness and prevent that stagnation that can happen with too much earth and water. And the wonderful thing about Kapha dosha is that it's kind of slow to get started on something, but once it really gets the routine, it will stick with it. And so my invitation to everyone is to just give yourself grace and know that in the spring, especially, it can feel really hard to get started, especially when it comes to movement and getting outside, things that we ideologically like, but have maybe been doing less of in the previous season. But it can feel hard to get back into that flow, but just trust that once you're back, you will be back. The body knows what to do, but in kapha season specifically, there's a little extra push that has to happen. So that's one of the first things that I would recommend to harness the energy of kapha. Do you have any thoughts about that or experiences with that, Christine?
Oh yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that. And at this moment in time, I'm feeling that like I've slipped into the rhythm and I've gotten over the hard part of starting. And so now like I have no desire to like not because it feels so good to have that movement. You know, we need that mobility to balance out the heaviness. It's
Yes,
real. It's super real.
completely. The other things that are really important are to um, incorporate more warming spices into the spring diet to just, again, counter the heaviness, counter the dampness. When we weave in spices like turmeric, ginger, black pepper, fenugreek, pipali, even like cayenne, something with just a little bit of spice, a little sharpness, it helps our food digest so it doesn't hit so heavy, so it doesn't sit so heavy in the body, so we continue to feel the lightness that is possible um, before that kapha becomes too much. So warming spices on your food, incredibly important for kapha balance, especially in the springtime.
Yeah, I love that. And that's such an easy one to just sprinkle on your meals. Do you have like less sort of like a seasonal spice blend that you use and you just have with you and you go to meals and things?
I like to keep like chewing spices for digestion that I've toasted, like sesame seeds, coriander, fennel seeds, all kind of ground up and roasted. But I keep my spices separate because I like change the ratio from moment to moment. But in the spring, I am always reaching for ginger, turmeric, and black pepper first. So I could probably combine them and save myself a little bit of time. Do you have a spring spice blend that you like?
I don't. I always keep them separate too, but I definitely am noticing that I do want that pungency more so now. Like just this morning, I wanted spiciness on my eggs. I like that's what I wanted. So it was like extra than what I would normally do. And I love that when you just stop to notice and you're like, ah, cool.
And that comes back to taking the pause, checking in, what does my body actually need? Oh, it's just a little more spice than it was even just yesterday. Like how amazing that you were able to hear that message and to honor it. And when we do honor those quick moments of intuition, it really helps keep us in balance. But if we keep ignoring it and ignoring it because we're just doing the thing that worked for us in the winter, which is a totally different uh, season of elements around us, if we just keep doing that, um, we may experience more imbalance, more disconnect from our body because the more we tune in, especially at the seasonal junctures, the more we may notice that our body is asking for something even just a little bit different.
Yeah, and what's so cool too is that, it's not about like being in perfect balance all the time. Because, like, that's even when I feel like I'm on a good track, my digestion will just all of a sudden be super slow. And I'm like, what the heck? I can't necessarily pinpoint why. But it's not really about that. It's about knowing how to course correct. And that's something that I did not even understand at all until I started studying Ayurveda. And then I was like, oh, well, that's okay because I know what to do about it. And that
Yes.
changed everything.
This is huge. And this moment comes up with every person that I work with. And it's just that understanding that Ayurveda is not about being in balance all the time. It's about noticing that you've gone out of balance, that your digestion feels a little bit heavy, and then kind of determining what tool is going to be the best for you. But it's not about, yeah, always having perfect digestion. That's just not the world that we live in. And the more we can give ourselves grace in that process, the more quickly we can course correct and just feel our best, and those imbalances here and there might even get a little bit smaller and smaller.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so cool.
It is so
Do you
cool.
what else do you have anything else that comes up for you when you think about kapha specifically and really harnessing that sweet spot of kapha for like each individual?
Mhm. Well, another practice that's really important for spring is dry brushing. And again, it's tricky when we talk about we're harnessing kapha, but the way to harness it in spring is to make sure that it doesn't become too much. So that's why, in order to harness the gifts of kapha, we actually need kapha balancing measures. So dry brushing is an ancient Ayurvedic practice of using a soft bristled brush or a silk glove to massage the skin, to massage dry skin, like before a shower. And it's really good for lymph flow. It's good for circulation. And these are things that can become inhibited if there's too much kapha, if there's too much stagnation in the body. Our channels just don't flow as well as they could. And we really need that sense of flow in order for kapha to function at its best. So dry brushing in the spring, in the morning, is a really wonderful practice to keep us feeling light and energized amidst that deep steadiness and stability that Kapha offers.
I love that. I have a pair of those Garshana gloves, those silk gloves, and I have not used them in a while.
Yeah.
So I'm getting them out today. Thank you, Molly.
And the gloves specifically are really good for those who have pitta type skin or vata, just more sensitive skin. The bristle brush can be pretty rough for anyone other than kaphas. Kaphas tend to have a thicker skin and they can handle a little more friction, a little more of the rough quality. But if you have pitta or vata skin, you really want to pick something on the gentle side and trust that it's doing its work.
Yeah, totally. So beautiful. So when you are working with groups during a spring cleanse, um, you know, do they, like what do people have to think about for themselves? Like obviously everyone coming in is going to be a little bit different. They're starting from a different place. They're like, you know, how do people go through a group setting with an individualized plan?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, the first step is to understand your own constitution, vata, pitta, or kapha, or some combination of the two. And we have a quiz I have a quiz on my website, cultivatebalance.com, where you can learn more about your dosha if you're not familiar with it already. Um, and then from there, within the program, my program is called the Reset for Resilience. I lay out modifications for each of the different constitutions. And I also lay out modifications for what do I do if I'm feeling constipated? What do I do if I have loose stools? All of those things are accounted for within the program. But I do maintain a private group chat. So people ask their individual questions in real time and then modify the program as they need. And it's so wonderful because every time someone asks a question, someone else was wondering it also.
Mhm.
So there's the opportunity to, learn, do the kind of self-study and Ayurvedic study to understand what modifications might be appropriate. And then there's the opportunity to just have the live experience of going through an Ayurvedic cleanse in a particular season and to make adjustments in real time with the support of community and of a practitioner. And I always recommend that people start to prepare their bodies by simplifying their diets. I recommend that people tell like partners, family members, and coworkers that they're going to be embarking on this journey so that they can make sure that they're getting the support that they need in their individual lives. Everyone has kind of a different container that they're going through their reset in. And so I like to help people get very oriented in their own space. It is not easy to do an Ayurvedic cleanse of a mono diet when like your partner is eating pizza in the other room, for example. So there are ways that we can prepare our mental emotional space and prepare our physical space to make sure that our unique cleanse is appropriate for what we're needing in the moment.
So beautiful. So beautiful. We, by the way, are going to have links to access Molly's website and participate in her cleanse in these show notes. Um, I think what I feel about Kapha Dosha, and this is, one that we really try to elevate in postpartum when it's a naturally Vata time, and we bring in a lot of Kapha qualities because it is such a time of natural depletion and resiliency is more vulnerable, and we're recovering, we're trying to rejuvenate at that time. So the gifts of Kapha are like really called for. But I think in general, when I really examine what Kapha Dosha is and how it can support humanity at this time is that we are just feeling so much instability in different ways around us. And it just seems like everybody is moving very fast. Our information all around us is moving so fast. The access and the speed by which we produce things and have expectations. I am totally in that space of when I decide I want something done, I want it done like immediately. I have to work to like cultivate the slowness that is really required to do most things well and intentionally. So when I think of balanced kapha, it's really about dropping into being really purposeful and
Yeah.
deliberate and
Yeah.
and feeling really clear about where I am in my world and
Yes.
what is where the supportive things are that are around me. And I can then discern what is just sort of surface distraction that's like buzzing around like annoying mosquitoes. And I don't feel as bothered by it. I don't feel like I'm going to be blown over by the next headline I read or, the five things that didn't get done on my list that day. I I want that feeling, and it feels like it's a bit of a struggle sometimes to actually have that. I have to work a little bit every day. And I think for me, like most days, I feel like I'm pretty good about being able to sit down and meditate and center. But that practice for me has been incredibly valuable
Mhm.
for cultivating healthy kapha dosha.
Absolutely. And what you're really speaking to is moving with intention. And kapha allows us to move with intention. And the more we move with intention, the more we can be in those gifts of kapha. I always tell people, whatever you do it on purpose. So whether or not you're um I don't, whatever your morning routine is, just do it on purpose. Make the choice, and that will really help you tap in to the gifts of kapha because it brings us into that slightly slower but very functional place that really gives us the endurance to like play the long game, which for the challenges that we're experiencing in our world and the stresses and the anxiety that can come up as a result of that, it's very important that we are resilient in our kapha and that we are steady and that we are making choices on purpose every day because ultimately we are playing the long game here in terms of how we care for ourselves, how that ripples out into our community, and hopefully how that ripples out into the world. And for me, so much of that comes from really allowing healthy kapha to be cultivated. I really believe that resilience is the way forward, and that comes from ideally cleansing or resetting the body just a little bit so that we're more clear and discerning, and then bringing in some deeply rejuvenative practices, kind of like what we do postpartum. After an Ayurvedic cleanse, we increase rejuvenative foods like dates and ghee and saffron, and all of that is when resilience is built, which is the true essence of kapha. And it's this um, energy, this substance that carries us through not just for a couple weeks after a reset, but for months. That's really the goal, and that's really what is possible when we tap into the gifts of kapha. It is a sustaining energy, and it is enduring.
So great. Do you have, Molly, any favorite resources? And I am going to link in the show notes to an article that you referred to that you have, which gives people some practical how-tos in addition to those that we've talked about. But do you have any other favorite resources for harnessing the gifts of kapha?
Yeah, I love the work of Trisha Hersey. She's also known as the Nap Minister, and she has a beautiful book. It's a manifesto called Rest is Resilience. And she's also interviewed on many wonderful podcasts. If you search her name, you'll be able to find what she's up to. But her work inspires me deeply in resting in a way that allows this resilient kapha energy to flow. And I think it's very timely for the world that we're living in. That's probably my top recommendation, other than joining us for the Reset for Resilience. And this article that I've written is about gifts of kapha season and kind of lays out some of the things we've talked about. So that will be a helpful resource as well.
Amazing. Molly, I hope that you will come back and talk to me about the gifts of Pitta dosha sometime this summer. What do you think?
I would love to.
Nice. And then we'll be back again in the fall to talk about the gifts of Vata dosha.
It's a series.
You have to do it. Molly, I just really appreciate the joy and the love that you bring to your practice and to your work and to your studies. And it's really a blessing to have connected with you in the way that we have. And I just want to thank you for that. And it's really been a pleasure to talk to you about this today.
Thank you, Christine. I'm so grateful for the space that you hold and the intention with which you hold that. And I've experienced that in many different ways from you over the last several months. And I'm so grateful and thank you very much.
So please check out the resources that we're attaching here to learn more about Molly and her work. And this conversation shall continue as we move through the seasons and really think about the beauty of each of these elements, the doshas, how they show up in our own bodies and our emotions and our feelings and our minds. And thank you. We'll see you next time.
Shanti, Shanti.
The Center for Sacred Window Studies has been training postpartum care providers, professionals who work with new families, and individuals passionate about postpartum care since 2018. We regularly host live free events alongside our online and in-person training and certification programs. Hop on our newsletter list to get direct access to all of our events and community support gatherings. Our mission is not only in training conscious postpartum care providers, but in fostering a robust, informed, and thriving community of postpartum professionals. Once you step inside, you're family forever. Visit www.sacredwindowstudies.com to add your email to our newsletter list. You can support our work by subscribing to the Sacred Window podcast and sharing with someone you know who would love it. Thanks for being here and participating in the culture-wide shift that recognizes the need for and the importance of conscious postpartum care.